All right. Good morning, everyone. This meeting is being recorded. This is our October 16th meeting. With the cold weather upon us, everybody should be checking their block heaters. I know we are here at Shenandoah. Cleaning the temperature sensors. It helps the buses start a little easier when they're nice and clean. There's Des. How you doing, Des? Again, this meeting is being recorded, just so you know, and we're going to post it to our YouTube channel when everything is complete. Our last meeting was held on September 18th. Cody Shamrock with Leonard Bus Sales presented on SCR systems, selective catalyst reduction. And some of the key points of that was that when the temperature light comes on under 5 miles an hour, it means that the regen is working properly. A lot of times we get that where drivers will call in and they'll say, I got my exhaust temperature light coming on. That means it's working properly. It's okay when they stop or when you get to a bus compound, red lights, that means that it is working properly. You spoke about the different parts on single and dual canister DPFs and how they come apart, how they clean them, how you can pay to have them cleaned, where they use their machine and go right through it. Talked about the different sensors and pressures, the particulate matter sensor, the NOx sensor, ammonia sensor, and that was only used for 2 years. He spoke about the dosing valve, and he also talked about all the cleaning procedures that are available in QuickServe. So there was a lot of other valuable information in there, but that meeting, it was posted to our YouTube channel, so you can always look back at that. But it was a really good, really informative meeting on the SCR system. So I also told everybody that as we get into our EV buses, that we're going to talk about EV buses a little bit. So we've been running our 4 EV buses for about a month now. At the end of each run, and I know I put out a little screen on YouTube showing that we can track how we track our EV buses, and it comes right up with the percentage of battery. So we can tell if the bus is charging. We can tell how it is depleting as it's going along its run. Now, our EV2 is currently at Leonard. It developed a vibration, and they're working on that. But our EV1 went about 100 miles in its day because we want to charge in the evening when the cost of electricity is less. It's off-peak hours. So we have our chargers set up where they're going to turn on by themselves at 7 o'clock p.m. And with the software, we can go through and see this. Now, the software that I'm talking about is in-charge software. It's just for the chargers. But after their mornings, after all the runs, and EV1 has 3 runs that went about 100 miles. It left the compound at 100%, and it came back. It averages about 35% when it comes back to the shop. So that's getting right down there. So that's pretty much the lowest we want that to go. But we're going to play with it. We're going to keep tweaking it, seeing what these things will do. EV4 has 2 runs, and that's at 52% at the end of the day. EV3 was at 60%. So those we're not really worried about. EV2 was about the same. So they're all consuming about half the battery life. Mr. Hazelton.
Are you going to start tracking also when the weather starts getting colder, if your percentages are going to go down throughout the day?
Yes, we are tracking this stuff, and we're definitely going to have this at every one of our head mechanics meetings until things change and everybody's used to it. But so long as there are questions on it, and so long as we're all getting involved in this, I'm going to do my best to keep everyone informed with what we're finding. So right now they're all at about consuming about half the battery life. Our 3 chargers, like I said before, they're programmed to turn on at 7. Now, they are not all turning on at 7 o'clock. Some are at 7:10, some are at 7:05. So you have to look at this stuff on the software and make sure that your buses are charging. Now, I don't have this in my notes or anything, but last night we had a bus that didn't charge. The charger didn't kick on. I spoke to In Charge on my way into work today, and we talked about it, and they told me that the charger was trying to charge the bus, but it might have been that it wasn't plugged in properly. We're going to look into this. It was trying to communicate with the bus, but it couldn't, and it tries for a few attempts, and then it stops. So that's an issue that we're going to have to overcome here, whether we have to have somebody go out and maybe before our other shift leaves, they'll have to go out and make sure that the buses are all plugged in. Now, this is the first time that we've had this issue. When we first got our chargers in there, they weren't turning on at all because they were set up on a different time zone. So there was a programming issue, but then we got it all worked out. But this one here today, that was kind of bothersome. And at our next meeting, I'll give everybody an update on what we found and what the issue was. I told you about the EV2 developed a vibration that is up at Leonard currently, and I spoke to him this morning, and I'll let you guys know what we find on that. It was in the steering. It was almost like it threw a weight off the tire, but I'm under the understanding that that was not the issue. Like I said, the in control software is really handy. We can start the charge. So if the chargers didn't start, I can start the chargers from my house. I'm home, I check them. If they didn't start at 7 o'clock, I can initiate it. And you can do this. It's web-based software, so you can do this from your smartphone. You can do it from your laptop at home, and it works really well. Now, you can also see the charge cycles. So this is how I could, if I didn't check them at night, or you can check it in the morning, you can see the different charge cycles. So there is a record that EV4 did not charge. You can print this out, you can store it, you can save it, you can have reports on this stuff. This is valuable information that we're going to use here as we move forward. Our chargers are drawing up to 93 amps at some points. They average about 50 amps is what it comes down to. But as it needs, the charge fluctuates. It can draw, as we've found now, up to around 93 amps, which is a lot of power. They were averaging about 637 volts while it's charging. 50 amps, 637 volts is average, but that does change. I mean, you can go up to 800 volts and 93 amps. You know, it can really get up there. So that's some findings that we've got so far at Shenandoah with our 4 buses. And like I said, we'll do this every morning. John, did you have anything to add on your electric buses?
No, just a few hiccups here and there. Yeah, I was just curious about your charging when it starts getting colder with the colder weather, whether longer to charge time and less efficient when you're running them in the cold weather. That's all.
Yeah, and we're definitely gonna, as we get into the colder weather, we're definitely gonna be presenting on this stuff as well, along with the regenerative braking, because we found that if you need to be running the regenerative braking in order to help maintain the charge. So we're going to move on to Micki's presentation here. But if you think of anything after the meeting, we can definitely discuss it, or we can present at the next meeting. So today's presenter will be Micki Jones with Capital Region BOCES. this came with everybody liked it last year when she did it, so we wanted to make it one of the first ones for this year. And she's going to be presenting on PESH laws and regulations. So what they're looking for the fuel islands, what they're, how to keep your record straight so that you don't get caught not in conformity. So go ahead, Micki.
All right. So good morning, everybody. So as Dan said, I'm going to present on PESH this time. Last time I talked about DEC and what they're going to look for when they do an inspection. PESH is one of those other organizations that may show up to inspect at your bus facilities. So I kind of wanted to run through what to expect during an inspection, and also what are some things that you would have to reach out to PESH and you would have to report to them. Because there are some times where you may actually have to let them know that you've had an incident. So I'm just going to ask you guys, how long has it been since you've seen a PESH inspector? About 5 years? Ken says about 5 years. Anybody else earlier than that?
We had a string of inspections and 4 different people, and then I haven't seen anybody since.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you're shorthanded, or they're shorthanded in that division.
They are shorthanded in that division. Doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. But so we'll go through what would trigger them to just show up at your facility as well. So we'll talk about what some of their initiatives are. And so I'm going to share my screen if anybody doesn't have anything else to start with. Let's see here. Can you guys see that?
We can see the email that I sent you.
You can see the email. All right, hold on a second. Let me go share. Something else.
Yeah, I think you have to go up and click on entire screen.
Yep. There we go. I'm just going to minimize for you guys for a second. Open my presentation back up. All right. How about now?
There it is. I see it.
Awesome. All right.
We can also see all the tabs on the. There you go.
All righty. How friendly. Sometimes I have little hiccups. It's always fun when you're presenting. So I'm going to let you guys. So if there's any questions, feel free to chime in because this is all for you guys. So there's different types of OSHA inspections. So these are the things that would trigger an inspection at your facility. So the first one is an imminent danger. So it's a condition or practice in the workplace that could cause death or serious physical harm immediately or before it can be eliminated. An imminent danger is typically something that's been brought to their attention. Either another inspector has been there for something and they saw something that needed to be reported to them. Could also be based on a worker's complaint. Fatalities and hospitalizations is the second reason why they would show up. Worker complaints and referrals. Again, if it's an imminent, it puts it to the top. If it's just a regular generalized complaint that's not an immediate threat, but they still will come out. Their time frame after an imminent danger complaint is they will be there within 1 business day. If it's a worker's complaint or a referral that is not of an imminent danger, they have 10 days to respond. And then they've got targeted inspections. So there's this thing called a local emphasis program, which I'll go through what the local emphasis program is for 2024. There's also national emphasis programs, which would not apply to us. That would be for just a regular Department of Labor inspector. And then particular hazards or industries. So we're going to see on the list that they've targeted for 2024 some specific injuries, industries. And then there's the follow-up inspections. So the local emphasis program for 2024, things that they look for, these are going to be the people that they're more likely to come and visit: refuse handlers and haulers, construction work sites, health, high hazard industries, noise hazards, tree and landscaping operations. But the one that would actually throw us onto the list is the new workplace violence regulations. So workplace violence is also one of their big emphasis this year. So if you do get violations, there's a penalty assessment. The penalty assessment for PESH is much lower from New York State Department, from federal OSHA. So everyone knows that PESH, New York State Public Employee Safety and Health, they are responsible for the enforcement of the OSHA regulations for public entities where the schools would fall. So their assessment is a per-day penalty assessment on an employer that fails to correct a violation by its abatement date until the violations are corrected. So the assessments are up to $50 per day for each non-serious violation, and then $200 a day for each serious violation. So when you get this notice of violation, they will list the penalty assessment for each violation in the failure to abate notice. So you'll get a follow-up letter, and it will tell you everything that they found during their inspection. The hope is you'll begin to fix things before you get that letter, because that letter can sometimes take them up to 30 days to send. But the violations notice wouldn't start, and your abate date doesn't start until you've actually received that letter. So an employee representative can accompany an OSHA inspector. And we're going to talk a minute about the opening conference, where they'll actually request an employee representative to be present. So typically they would be looking for somebody from the union. The workers can talk to the inspector privately if they so wish. Workers are actually allowed to point out hazards, describe injuries, illnesses, or near misses that result from those hazards, and describe any concerns that they have about the safety or a health issue. Workers can also find out about the inspection results, the abatement measures, and may object to dates set for violations to be corrected. So when do you have to reach out to PESH and make a contact? Within 8 hours of a worker fatality, even if you're still investigating the issue. I will tell you that I had an incident in one of my schools. We had a worker who had a heart attack, and he ended up passing away. We did have to contact PESH and tell them that we had a worker who passed away. At that point, we were still investigating. We did not believe that his heart attack had anything to do with what he was physically doing on the job. But even if you're still investigating it, you still are required to report. They came out for that incident. They talked to his fellow employees. They did just an opening conference. They looked at our video footage to see if they could trace that employee throughout his work shift. And then they left, and they basically said, we're waiting for the results from his autopsy, but we believe this was natural causes. The district is not going to be held liable for anything, but the district did the correct thing by calling PESH and reporting that had happened. You also have to report within 8 hours of an inpatient hospitalization of 2 or more employees. So if you have 2 or more employees that go to the hospital for the same reason, you have to notify them within 8 hours. Within 24 hours, if they have a hospitalization of any single employee, you're supposed to reach out and let them know. 24 hours of an amputation. This includes fingers up to the first digit or a loss of an eye. And if the patient died from a work-related incident that occurred within the last 30 days. So somebody went to get treatment, and then they had follow-up complications. Then if they died within that 30 days of that initial accident or injury, and the death would be related to that accident or injury, if it happened within those 30 days, you're supposed to let them know. So here's what the inspection process would look like. So an inspector arrives and they identify themselves as working for PESH, and they're going to call for an opening conference. They're going to look for somebody from upper management to be there. They're going to look for a union representation, daily frontline supervisors, and they're also going to request to see if you have any safety representation. So an important thing to point out is if all are not immediately available, the inspector is required to give you a reasonable time frame to get everyone together. The acceptable standard is an hour. So say to them, hey, it's going to take me a few minutes to get everyone together. There's a Stewart's around the corner. Can you come back in a half an hour? Can you come back in 45 minutes? They might try to give you a little bit of an attitude, but they are required by the standard to give you that time. It is not recommended that you tell the inspector can you schedule for another date? It is also not recommended that you tell the inspector that they need to come back with a court order. That just makes things ugly. It appears then that you're hiding something and they come back with, I hate to say, a sharper pencil. So, but I wanted to make sure that you guys knew about being able to tell them that, hey, I need about an hour to get everybody together, because I think a lot of people don't know that or understand that. And the inspector may be a little bit pushy, telling you have to get everybody together right now. So, but those are your rights. So don't be afraid to use that. You can offer them a cup of coffee. I will tell you that they won't take it because that appears to be an impropriety. Any questions about that when they show up? Okay. So in the inspection process, the inspector will inform you of why they're there. So the cause of their inspection. So they're going to reveal if they had an employee file a complaint. They won't tell you who made the complaint. They will tell you what the complaint was. And this is, again, is to protect your employees. They'll also tell you if this is just what they call a programmed inspection, which means your time basically was up. So they say that it is random, but again, we know that they have a priority list that they look at. So they're going to conduct a records audit, and we'll talk about what some of those records are going to look like. And they're going to conduct a physical audit of the workplace. And they want employees to accompany that inspector. And then they'll have a closing conference after they have finished. And the closing conference will be just this is what we found. To kind of give you the heads up before you get that notice of violation. So some of the record keeping they're going to look for is that last 3 years of your accident and injury log. And they're actually looking to see if it's work site specific. So if you are strewn out at many addresses, there should be an OSHA record, an OSHA log for each site. So for transportation, if you are located on a different piece of property than the rest of the school district, that actually falls under a different OSHA log. I know that some schools have, especially smaller schools, they've lumped them all together, but it's important to understand that if it's a separate parcel of land, they're required to be different. Then they're going to look at your written programs. So they're going to look at things like your HAZCOM program, your bloodborne pathogens, lockout, tagout. Do you have a personal protective equipment plan? In that, do you have anything regarding hearing conservation? Remember, I said hearing conservation was one of their to-dos this year. Material handling. Do you have forklifts? Do you have a written forklift plan? And then that new one that they're looking for is workplace violence prevention. They also look for your training records. When was the last time everyone had their training? They're also going to ask to see your bulletin board where all of your postings are located. So do you have your poster that tells everyone that they have the right to know? Do you have your minimum wage poster? Do you have your FMLA poster? So do you have that entire list of postings? Now, there are companies out there that will sell you those postings, but that's really not necessary. when you go to the PESH website, you can actually look under postings, and there are free copies of everything that they require. So I know that a lot of people, like I said, they'll just spend that buck to get those all-in-one posters, but they're really not necessary. You can really get everything you need for free from their website. So when they look at your program review, they look at that HASCOM. They're going to look for the written program. They're going to talk to you about the SDS sheet availability. So if you do have an online system for your SDSs, can everybody access it? Does everybody know how to access it? Looking for a chemical inventory, looking for training records, again, looking for those postings, one of them being that right to know poster. One of the things that I've done is I've updated my district's right to know posters, and I've put a QR code on it. And that QR code on the right to know poster will take them right to the MSDS sheet system because we use that online system. That bloodborne pathogens written program, the questions are going to be who cleans blood or other potentially infectious materials? What products do they use to do that cleaning? What do you do with the waste? And can you document that training? And that training being annual. They're also going to ask about the hepatitis B vaccine, vaccination records, consent and declination forms, at least having where that information is located. So when they get to the lockout tagout program, they're making sure you have a written program, that you have identified all of your equipment that can be or should be locked out and tagged out during service. One of the questions I've seen them ask, particularly at a transportation facility, is if you have a bus and you're working on a bus and you have parts that are on order, how do you prevent a driver from taking that bus? That's considered part of the lockout tagout process. Do you have the keys all locked up? Do the drivers have access to keys? One of the things that I've worked with the district on is they actually bought a cover that goes over the top of the steering wheel. So it prevents someone when they get on that bus and they sit in the driver's seat, they can look at this posting that's on the steering wheel that says, stop, this bus is out of service. So you don't then take it on somebody remembering it. It's something that's right there in their face. And then in your program, do you have a description of how to prevent accidental startups? It could be as simple as we disconnect the battery cables. It could be we remove the spark plugs. What are you going to do to prevent an accidental startup for a piece of equipment? If you're working on other equipment besides the buses, say you're working on a dump that the grounds guys use, do you have a process, a procedure to chock and block the utility bed to make sure that it doesn't have an accidental startup if you're working on the pistons for that? So the PPE assessment. So that's part of your personal protective equipment program. So it's really what equipment must be worn by your employees. So do you have think about their heads, their hands, their shoes, their clothing. When using an impact, an example is when you're using an impact wrench, employees must wear earmuffs with a noise reduction rating of 24 decibels. When's the last time you looked at that? Remember, noise reduction is one of their things that they're looking at heavily this year. So this is an example of a PPE assessment. So what you do for a PPE assessment is you look at every single job function that would be done in your shop. So, and then you have the list of safety shoes, of personal protective equipment. And here you would tell them whether that piece of equipment is going to be a recommendation or a requirement. So if you have the policy, if your shop has the policy that you must always wear safety shoes, then in that column you would have that they're required for every single job. The PPE assessment is supposed to be reviewed on an annual basis. It is supposed to be signed by a supervisor, and it's supposed to be accessible to employees. So is it posted around the shop? Is it posted in the locker room? Is it posted at a place where all employees could actually see it and have reference to it? Got material handling. That's another one of their big emphasis this year. So that written program. Do you have a forklift in your shop? Do you have a forklift written plan? In that plan is what's the capacity of that lift? What are the restrictions when you do not use that lift? How are you using it? What's your VIN number? What's your serial number? What's the type of lift you have? And then showing that you're doing that training, and that training on your lift should be every 3 years. Now, the classroom training portion should be initial, and then at a minimum of every 3 years doing a driving standard performance. If you have a new employee, are they getting that initial classroom type training plus the driver performance? And if they come in from another facility, another site, and they show you a forklift card and they say, hey, I don't need to be trained, I'm already certified. Remembering that forklift certification is employer specific. So even though they come in with certification from somewhere else, at a minimum, you're supposed to make sure that they've done a driver performance evaluation. Who can do that evaluation? It can be done by a supervisor who has knowledge and skill of how to use a forklift. It doesn't necessarily have to be a certified trainer. So it's really specific in the OSHA standard that says in order to do forklift training, the forklift trainer must have the knowledge and skill to use that piece of equipment. And then the workplace violence. So the workplace violence prevention is fairly new. I know most of us were just grappling with that at the end of last year. So making sure that you have that written program. That program included the evaluation of the workspace. In that program evaluation, you listed risk factors. So many factors for transportation might be the fact that you work in open areas. So there may be, the gates are always open during the school day. So it would not prevent someone from coming onto your facility, which puts your employees at risk. And then what are mitigation efforts? So how are you going to correct or make it so that employees are safer? Do you have the reporting mechanism put in play? Do all employees know about the reporting mechanism? And then making sure that you've actually retained and done that training. So that training was supposed to be done by May 3rd of 2024. And then it must be done by each year. I know many people are just lumping it into their annual first of the year trainings. But again, making sure that it's at least annual. So after they've looked through all of this paperwork, it usually takes them about an hour, hour and a half or so to get through all of the paperwork. They're ready to do a physical walkthrough of your workspace. They may only want to go look at the area that they have the concern about. However, they won't ignore a violation if they see one. So they don't come in with blinders. They're looking at your entire facility, but they may be focused on one particular thing. Or they could be there to look at the entire facility. They may say, hey, it's been forever since we've been to Shenandoah, and it's been, so we're going to really just look at their entire thing since we're here. Again, sometimes that is based on how much time the inspector has also, what other things are on their docket. So some low-hanging fruit, I like to call it, the really simple violations that you should watch for to make sure that you don't give them a reason to write you up. Electrical violations, they can always find one. So as you're going through your shop, always keeping an eye on things like when's the last time somebody checked your cords, making sure that all the grounding prongs are in play. I know that that's one of the first places that they will always go is pick up a cord. They're going to look to see if there's electrical boxes that have open junctions with no covers on them, open wires, no wire nuts. And they're going to look to see how you're plugging things in. And so obviously that picture there is a power strip that's definitely overloaded. So they're just really going to be saying, how is your shop's function as far as electrical safety? Material handling. They're going to look to see, is it neat? Is it orderly? Do you have stuff all over the place? What does it look like? How's your chemical safety? Again, these are things that would be easy for them to issue violations for. So those are, again, those low-hanging fruits, trying to keep those places neat, clean, organized, not having any violations that can be seen without really having to dig, not to look. If you have a mezzanine, one of the places I know that they're hot on is looking at your mezzanine storage, checking to see do we have storage underneath the mezzanine stairs? Because if somebody was up on the mezzanine and there was a safety issue or safety concern, could the storage under the mezzanine pose a hazard to them? They're also going to look to say, is your mezzanine deck properly rated? So does it have an engineering number of how many pounds per square foot can be placed on that mezzanine? Typically, you could find that right on an as-built drawing for your mezzanines, making sure that it is, again, written right on the deck is what they're looking for, either on the wall as you're going up, on the mezzanine itself, on the girders, so that somebody who could quickly look to see how much weight that mezzanine can handle. So if it's been a long time, if you can't read that anymore, making sure somebody gives a touch up to that. Machine guarding. Again, this is one of those low-hanging fruits. Everybody's got a bench grinder. And probably 90% of the bench grinders that are in use are not properly adjusted. So making sure that you have your guards in place, so making sure that the shields are over the top of your wheels, making sure that the wheel between the top of the wheel and the tongue guard at the top is only 1/4 of an inch, and making sure that between the wheel and your work rest is only 1/8 of an inch. With all this adjusting, it's almost a constant thing to have to make sure that somebody's keeping an eye on this piece of material. Because again, this is an easy violation for them. And walking and working surfaces. So they're going to look to see, are spills cleaned up? Do you have anything on the floor? Are extension cords cleaned up, or do you have multiple trip hazards? If you have grating, does your grating lay in the trough like it's supposed to? Is it curled? Is it bent? Do you need to have some maintenance done? People who work in your shop may know to step over the top of those, but it is considered to be a walking and working surface and a trip hazard. And then things like my pallet storage are things just left lying around where somebody could easily trip. So after they've walked through your facility, they're going to do a closing conference, which is going to be that review of what they have found. And they're not going to say, here's your violation list. They're not going to give you anything in writing except for the OSHA pamphlet that talks about their job and why they're there. So hopefully somebody was taking good notes while you were doing the walkthrough. They'll go through their notes, but won't physically leave you their notes. They'll give you those things in your notice of violation. So the notice of violation is from DOL of what they found during your inspection. And then they give you abatement dates, which is the date that items must be corrected. Sometimes the dates they give you are a short time frame. Sometimes you run into a problem trying to comply. So a public and sector employer can apply for a petition to modify an abatement date. So if you're getting close to that date and you can't get something fixed, maybe it's because the unavailability of a part, you're waiting on a professional, you're waiting on a technical person. You have to make sure that you reach out and you do a petition to modify the abatement date. DEC, I know they're really great about when you contact them and you say, hey, I'm waiting for Del Ripple to come. They've been here. They've got some parts on order. And they kind of are like, they'll take you at your face value for that as long as you provide them an email with that information. Department of Labor is a little more strict. They actually say you have to file this petition to modify an abatement date. So you have to prove that you've done everything that you can do. You've taken all the available steps to protect the employees that are exposed to the hazard, and you started an effective program from coming into compliance as soon as possible. So, and then to close out your violations, a PESH inspector may accept photographs for a corrective action. So they may accept that you send them your notice of violation back with pictures of when you've corrected everything with dates attached, or they may actually schedule a follow-up inspection, depending on the severity and technicality of some of your violations. Hopefully, they'll just accept the photographs, because I have seen where the inspector does a follow-up inspection, and when they're there for that follow-up inspection, they find other things. So sometimes it could put you into an inspection cycle where it seems like they're never going to go away. But most of the time I am seeing lately that they will just accept photographs with the correction dates. And with that, do you guys have questions about what I presented?
Do you have a copy of that PPE assessment
I can
example
definitely
worksheet?
I can definitely share one with you guys.
All right, that was pretty cool. I've never seen that before.
Sure.
Just to add, one of my inspections, they like to look at the bench vise jaws, and they like to look for the welding screen, and they really like to look at the torches to make sure that you have all your PPE for the torches. That was a big one.
Yeah, and they also, what I didn't put in there for you guys is they're also going to look at your tank storage. So when you have your oxygen and your acetylene and you've got your gauges on them, are they bled off? And if they are in storage, are they separated and capped?
All right. Does anybody have any other questions for Micki? All right. Not seeing any. Micki, if you can send that information out, I will make sure that everybody gets a copy of it so everybody can utilize it.
Absolutely.
When we had our inspection, we had it because of a complaint. Kids had they'd emptied fire extinguishers in buses as a senior prank or something. And then when they did that, the drivers driving it said they were getting the stuff in their lungs. So then we had some drivers that were cleaning them, and then the one driver was cleaning it. He was using a respirator, and we didn't have him fit for the respirator.
Yeah.
And then he said he got it in his lungs, and so we got written up for that. We got written up for not having fit tested. Basically, if you have somebody using a respirator, they got to be fit tested.
Yeah, and don't forget that that's also if you have somebody using an N95. So that's that paper type respirator that you would see. So the only thing that does not require a fit test and a physical is a dust mask. So dust mask, really thin paper, single band. So if it has got a NIOSH certification on it, then it does require a fit test and a physical.
Well, we had them N95 masks, and because they said we had to have them fit tested for them too, but
Yep.
Nobody could give us a fit test on one of them.
Oh, you can do a qualitative fit test on that. So typically what I use is a banana oil or a saccharin. And if they can taste the saccharin or the Bitrix while they're wearing the mask, you put them in the hood and you pump the aerosolize the saccharin or the Bitrix. And if they can detect it, then you know that it's leaking.
You can do fit tests?
It can be done.
I mean, like, if we send them to the medical facility right now, BOCES can do that?
We do have some staff that are trained to do that. We can't do the physical. We can't do the physicals, however. So somebody's got to have gone for the medical physical. And then if they've had the medical physical and you're looking for an N95 certification, we could actually help you out with that.
But we could technically do the fit test hear ourselves at our facility?
If you had the proper equipment and somebody who was trained on how to properly do one. Your BOCES health, safety, risk management personnel, if you have them, once somebody's gone to the doc and gotten medical clearance from a doctor, an occupational doctor that says they are medically cleared to wear a respirator, then we could help you do a qualitative fit test, which again is using using a saccharin or a Bitrix to see if the respirator leaks.
All right, and we could contact you to have somebody certified.
Whoever your health and safety representative is could help you out.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Micki? All right, not seeing any. If anybody thinks of any questions, please let me know. I will make sure that your questions are answered. Our next meeting, I'm still waiting to hear back from the presenter on this one, but if not, I've had some people wanting to know more about our board that we have here at Shenandoah. Our board, I did a presentation for NIAP that went over well, and that is probably going to be our next meeting, which will be November 13th, unless things change, and I will let everybody know. But as of right now, it's November 13th, and we're going to go over our shop board and how we are utilizing that to save time and work more efficiently with fewer people, because everybody's driving, and there's a lot of benefits to using the scheduling system that we're using. So that'll be November 13th. It'll be virtual, just like this one. So does anybody else have anything else to add to today's meeting?
Yeah, we need a treasurer, and we need a vice president, and we need a secretary.
Yeah, we do. I know we bring this up at every meeting. We do need some help. Currently, it's myself and Christine, and that's one of the reasons that there are no dues for this year. We're going to keep going virtual. We did have some people that want some in-person meetings, which we could do at their facility and maybe record them. And that way we can all get the information there. It was going to be at Queensberry School District. I've got to speak with him and see how he's coming along with that. That's going to be with air conditioning. What he wanted, some in-person air conditioning training. So what I did is I put him in touch with the person that from Valio that will, or Spheros now, that will put on the training. And when they do that, I will let everybody know, and we'll be able to go there and either sit in on it or at least record it, and that way everybody can get it. But we could use some help. I mean, it's not a lot of work. I try to do most of this stuff, between myself and Christine, and Sean Falova stepped up. He's now representing, he's on the board to help come up with training programs, training classes. So any bit of help would be appreciated. And I know everybody's busy, everybody's driving, people have home lives, it's busy. So we try to keep this as simple as we can. So please, if somebody can step up, would be awesome. But does anybody have anything else to add to today's meeting? Like I said, we're going to go over at each meeting, we're going to go over where we are with the EV buses, and anybody else that gets into the EV buses, please share the knowledge so we can all be in on it. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. All right, we will see you guys all on November 13th.
Yeah, Brian.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep, we'll see you guys later.
Thanks, Micki. Thank Dan.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Good day, folks.